This is an art collage novel video. I made this series so you guys can experience the story faster. The video will focus on the character's psychology, the images are for illustration purposes only. Yunxiao's heart skipped a beat as he said with a frown, "Blade sect? Son-in-law?" He seemed to have thought of something, and his expression became a little strange. After returning from yesterday's battle, he immediately went into seclusion to recover. He only came out now and did not talk to anyone about his battle with Chen Feng. Now, he seemed to understand why the people from the Blade sect had appeared outside Song Yiyang City. If the person in front of him was here to participate in the technique, then the dust would have been everywhere. He suddenly realized that something was wrong. Since no one knew him yesterday, it was fine if the son of the sect master of the Blade sect had beaten him up. He could just leave after that. However, if tomorrow morning wind appeared, he would be able to recognize him. Naturally, he was not afraid of anything. It was just that his current strength was too low to contend with the 7 superpowers. Ding Ling also whispered in his ear, telling him about the Mando Chamber of Commerce. Sure enough, it was exactly as Yunxiao had guessed. He could not help but feel a headache coming on. He hoped that Chen Feng's injuries were too serious and that he would not be able to participate in the competition tomorrow. He now regretted not stepping on Chen Feng a few more times and breaking a few more bones yesterday. Ding Ling saw the worry on his face and thought that he was worried after knowing the other party's identity. She laughed frankly and said, "It'll be fine. Whether it's the Saber sect or anyone else, Tianyuan Trading Company will always be with young Master Yun." Yunxiao knew that she had misunderstood, but he still felt it in his heart. He smiled slightly and did not explain. Impudent. Xiao Jingming flew into a rage. With his high and mighty status, he could not allow anyone to offend him, not to mention in front of the woman he liked. This was a taboo for every man. He slammed the table and rose to his feet on the spot. A long sword made a sharp sound as it pierced straight at Yunxiao, trying to take his life. In his eyes, these people from the Chamber of Commerce were just a bunch of country bumpkins. He had already given them enough face by participating in this technique, but there were still people who were blind and wanted to court death. When he saw Yunxiao's cultivation base of 5 stars martial emperor, he attacked without thinking. "You can't." The powerful citizen cried out in shock, but it was too late. Furthermore, Xiao Jingming didn't really listen to him, and in his panic, he turned to look at Shui Luoyan. Although Shui Luoyan's marriage partner was Chen Feng, he did not expect this young alchemist from the Saber sect to be so fascinated by her. Shui Luoyan turned her head slightly and pretended not to see it. Her eyes followed Xiao Jingming's sword and looked at it indifferently. Ignorant. Yunxiao snorted and raised his hand, then slightly stretched out his fingers and pinched the sword, pointing at a flower and smiling. Xiao Jingming immediately found that the long sword could no longer move. Not only that, but a force was directly transmitted from the sword, which also shocked his body. He was suddenly shocked. "Get lost. Let's go," Yunxiao said in a low voice. Then, he flicked the sword with 2 fingers, causing it to let out a very strong dragon roar that buzzed in the ears of the people around him. Xiao Jingming, on the other hand, felt half of his body go numb from the shock, and his whole body was sent flying back to the Mando Chamber of Commerce's seats. The powerful man hurriedly flew up and caught Xiao Jingming. Otherwise, if this old man fell and broke, he couldn't afford to be responsible. Damn it, damn it. Kill him now. Xiao Jingming roared with a red face. He already knew that he couldn't beat the other party, so he didn't dare to go forward and humiliate himself. He kept roaring at the powerful people. Without waiting for the man to answer, Cui Bo said, "All right, stop fooling around. Since he was already here, let's start. Any more troublemakers will be disqualified." This time, Xiao Jingming also quieted down and didn't dare to make too much noise. His mission was to get first place. If he was disqualified and could not complete the mission, the consequences would be very serious. However, his face was purple with shame and anger, and he did not dare to look at the woman he had fallen in love with. His hatred for Yunxiao had risen to the level of his greatest enemy. "There's no need to take it to heart," young Master Xiao, Shui Luoyan said indifferently. This man's strength is rather strange, and young Master Xiao is an alchemy master. Naturally, you can't have a martial arts competition with him. However, this man also seems to be the representative of Tianyuan Trading Company. When young Master Xiao defeats him, he will naturally be able to vent his anger. Oh. He's actually the person who created the technique? That's great. Xiao Jingming's fingernails were almost digging into his flesh as he glared at Yunxiao, his heart filled with anger. As Cui Bo's voice rang out, the large square, which was filled with tens of thousands of people, fell silent. Everyone's eyes were focused on the central 10,000 Treasures Tower's seats, waiting for his announcement. Everyone began to become nervous. I'll cut to the chase, Cui Bo said. As usual, the alchemist's comprehensive ability is a test of the alchemist's skill formula. As usual, the standard of judgment is based on the level of the tower's clearance. He opened his palm, and a small round pagoda with 7 apertures flew out. The weapon essence on it vibrated and shone with 7 different lights. The power was a little chaotic. Next, we will invite the representatives of each Chamber of Commerce to inspect the tower. Cui Bo made a hand seal and the light on the tower disappeared. Then, he pushed it lightly and the tower flew towards Luoying of the Four Extremes sect on the left. After Luoying received it, his spiritual sense circled the tower and also extinguished a ray of light. He said indifferently, "No problem," he said. He then passed it to the people of Money sect. It was only then that Yunxiao understood that the art tower was jointly sealed by the 7 chambers of commerce and handed over to Myriad Treasure's store to manage. If he were to perform another technique now, he would need the people of the 7 chambers of commerce to check if his seal was intact and if the art pagoda had been tampered with. As everyone's technique was different and extremely brilliant, the possibility of Myriad Treasure's store breaking through the seal jointly laid by the other 6 chambers of commerce and tampering with it was 0. Moreover, before each chamber of commerce unsealed their seal, they would investigate it again to ensure that nothing went wrong. After everyone had examined it, the spell tower was passed to Ding Ling. Only a beam of light was left on it. She examined it carefully and retracted the last beam of light with a unique technique. She pushed the spell tower back into Cui Bo's hand and said, "No problem." Cui Bo smiled and took the spell tower. Since all the representatives have examined it, it proves that everything is normal in this art tower. I'll take my leave. His left hand gently moved forward. A green light emerged, dragging the technique tower to the center. As soon as it touched the ground, it made a huge trembling sound and slowly grew bigger. In a few breaths, it grew to a height of 1,000 feet and a radius of 30 to 40 meters. It stood tall in the center of Songyue City, looking extremely beautiful from the sky. Everyone, hand over the keys. Cui Bo spread his hands, and the other 6 representatives took out a piece of jade inlaid with gold and shot it at the door of the spell tower. There were 2 old men carved on the door. One was meditating and refining pills, while the other was condensing thunder and refining tools. The expressions and movements of the 2 were vividly drawn, and even the fingerprints on their hands were basic refining techniques, standard textbook movements. Around the 2 old men was an ordinary refining array. The 7 array eyes had caved in and were missing a piece of material, which was the key that the 7 old men were holding. 7 rays of light shot into the array eye. Immediately, there was movement on the door. The 2 old men who had remained still suddenly moved. The incantation seals in their hands began to change. The door slowly opened, and a corridor ladder appeared, leading to the depths. Everyone held their breath and focused, not daring to take a deep breath during this process. It was only when the door opened that they began to breathe. Everyone, I won't say much about the rules. This art tower has a total of 9 floors, which represent the strength of the 1st to the 9th level. Whoever can reach the highest level will win. Cui Bo made a gesture of invitation and said, "From now on, if someone stops at a cultivation level for more than 2 hours, it means that your strength can only stop there. Then, you will be automatically transported out. The top 10 people will be given 10 to 1 point, depending on their ranking. This tower has already set up an age restriction, and those above 30 can't enter. Participating brats, please come in. Although this kind of test using the art tower as the level of the art was not completely accurate, it was still a common practice on the continent. As soon as the door of the technique pagoda opened, everyone rushed in impatiently. Most of them were disciples of small chambers of commerce, hoping to get the first chance. However, that was just a psychological comfort. The real results had nothing to do with the order. A middle-aged man was apprehensive and asked, "I'm 30 this year, can I participate?" Cui Bo looked at him and said, "You'll know when you go over and try. If your actual age is over, you won't be able to enter the sect." The middle-aged man walked forward with a nervous look on his face. He took a step into the door and entered it without any obstruction. He was immediately ecstatic and burst into laughter. "He's just a 6th-tier alchemist," said Nan Menxingya with a sneer. "What's the point of going in?" Cui Yuan said, "You can't say that. The function of this art pagoda is not only to test the strength of the opponent. It is also very beneficial to the cultivation of art. Otherwise, there wouldn't be so many people fighting to participate in the competition. It's only for the sake of cultivation. The only ones who have the strength to compete are the few of us." After the two finished speaking, they entered one after another. "Kid, I'll wait for you inside. Come in if you dare." Xiao Jingming pointed a finger at Yunxiao and said fiercely, then rushed in. Tang Xan smiled. "It's just a mad dog. Don't worry about it." Yunxiao simply ignored him. He nodded and entered the tower. The black passage went straight up, and soon, it was bright. The whole interior was actually a vacuum, with nothing inside. Many young alchemists were suspended in it and rising slowly. Yunxiao was a little surprised. The test method of each art tower was different, and this tower did not seem to be so simple. He did not know who had refined it, but it had an ancient charm to it. He slowly walked into the yellow light, and the scenery in front of him changed. It turned into a world of flowers and spring, and there was actually a universe inside. At that moment, Yunxiao was in a sunny valley, with hundreds of flowers in full bloom and spirit energy overflowing. It was an indescribably comfortable place. A few lines of words were carved on the cliff of the valley. One only needed to pluck 10 level 2 spiritual herbs to enter the lower level. One wrong move and one would be teleported out. Yunxiao could not help but laugh. This was a test of the most basic identification ability, which was a necessary skill for a mature first-tier alchemist to accurately identify second-tier spirit herbs. It seemed that Cui Bo's words that each level represented a level of alchemy made a lot of sense. He casually plucked 10 level 1 spiritual herbs. The sky changed instantly, and all the flowers disappeared. He had returned to the art tower. A faint light appeared on his body and rose slowly, directly raising his level by 1. At this moment, everyone had already entered the second level and above. He was considered slow. When he looked up, the first few people had already reached the 4th and 5th level. However, before he could take a closer look, just as he reached the second level, the scenery in front of him changed again. It was a new scene. He was actually in the swamp of a forest. Over 100 people poured into the tower, making it a little crowded. However, everyone was being tested individually, so they did not affect each other. There were constant whispers outside the technique tower, but it was generally very quiet. Everyone's eyes were focused on the tower, and at that moment, the tower became translucent. From the outside, they could see through it and observe the situation of each participant. "It's starting inside, let's start too," Luoying said with a smile. As soon as he said that, everyone smiled. Cui Bo said, "It's really hard to guess the champion this year. Every one of them is astonishingly strong. The bed itself is extremely difficult." "What's so difficult about it?" Luoying laughed. 1 billion mid-grade primordial stones as one bet, and the winner will split the wagers according to the number of bets. "It's a good idea," Cui Bo nodded after some thought. His hands quickly formed seals and a water curtain appeared beside the art tower. It gradually expanded and his index finger quickly pointed. Names began to appear on the water curtain. They were the participants from the 7 chambers of commerce. No one had any objections that the champion's goal was to be one of the 7. Even if it was an unexpected win, it would definitely not exceed this range. However, Cuibo still said, you can place your bets on other people, but you just have to write your name on it and place your primeval stones. Elder D, you'll be in charge of the statistics. Di Shenghua chuckled and stepped out of the ranks to guard the water curtain. This time, everyone began to discuss one after another. Regarding the strength of these 7 people, it was indeed like a fog. Not to mention that everyone did not understand, even the 7 chambers of commerce had a very vague understanding of the background of each other's participants. I'll bet 2 on young master Tang Xian, 2 on Li Yunxiao, and 3 on Xiao Jingming, Luo Ying said with a smile. He casually threw a few storage bags over. After Di Shenghua took it and checked it, he put Luo Ying's name on the water screen, indicating the betting target and the betting code. Voila! With him taking the lead, it immediately caused all kinds of speculations and doubts. Luo Ying actually bet 2 times on Li Yunxiao. It's hard to understand. Is it true that Li Yunxiao is an 8th-tier alchemist? Nonsense. If he was at the 8th rank, Lord Luo would have bet all his fortune on him. You have to know that if you can win an unexpected victory at this time, the primordial stones you earn will be enough to open your own merchant association. That makes sense, but I still have to mention the unpopular bomb explosion. It's understandable that he bet on Tang Xian and Xiao Jingming, but this is a bit of a problem. Why don't you follow Mr. Luo and bet on it? I think you'll make a profit. Follow? How much money do you have? That's 1 billion in one bet. Luo Ying's betting configuration caused quite a bit of discussion, but everyone was still holding a wait-and-see attitude. Who knew if he would increase the bet and change the configuration ratio in the future? His financial resources were immeasurable, and if they rashly followed him, they were afraid that they would lose all their money at night. Cui Bo laughed in surprise. It seems that Sect Master Luo has no confidence in Tang Xian. Luo Ying smiled faintly, I'll bet a little first, who knows if I won't increase the bet later. We'll wait and see for now, I have high hopes for these 3. That's right, Cuibo nodded. Everyone's strength is extraordinary, so it's indeed a bit difficult to make a decision. The end of the bet will be when the first person reaches the 6th level. I'll place 3 bets on our son first. He then threw a storage bag over. The sum of primordial stones wagered during each duel was abnormally shocking. It was even comparable to the annual income of those large and medium-sized chambers of commerce. If it was an unexpected win, then most likely no one would dare to claim the money they earned, for fear of inviting a fatal disaster. Those small chambers of commerce all hoped to make a lot of money, but they couldn't make too much. The powerful man pondered for a moment and said, 10 stakes, Xiao Jingming. And NBSP. Voila. The bets of the powerful people once again ignited everyone's speculations, because the person who knew Xiao Jingming's strength the best here was probably him. Moreover, everyone knew that the condition for the marriage between the Mando Chamber of Commerce and the Blade Sect was that they had to obtain the final first place. In that case, the results of both duels could not be bad, and they even had to be in the top ranks to have any hope of winning. How could the people sent out be bad? As soon as he placed his bet, it immediately attracted a lot of followers, and the number of bets under Xiao Jingming immediately rose to more than 30. Although everyone supported the Merchant Union's victory in spirit, they were still rational when they placed their bets. Humph, a bunch of spineless things, suppressing outsiders. Qian Wudi snorted coldly, not hiding his disdain and contempt at all. He threw out a storage bag and said, I'll bet 10 on Li Yunxiao. Walala. Zhang Chang's face was filled with black lines as he said awkwardly, young master, don't you think highly of your own family? Qian Wudi frowned and said, as long as you're from the Merchant Union, you're family. Of course, I'm optimistic about Nan Menxingye, but I'm more optimistic about Li Yunxiao. Among all the people in the Merchant Union, he and Tang Jia were the only ones who knew Yunxiao the best, and they knew how terrifying he was the most. While everyone was speechless, Tang Jia suddenly said, I'll bet 20 on Li Yunxiao. This time, they didn't faint, but everyone's faces changed slightly. Although the 7 chambers of commerce had endless wealth, this was not how they played. Some astute people immediately stopped their impulse to bet and quietly waited for the next result. Qianwudi's expression changed slightly as he stared coldly at Tang Jie and snorted, "I'll add 10 more, Li Yunxiao." Sparks seemed to fly between the two of them as they looked at each other with cold eyes. Zhang Chang's face was full of sweat. "Young master, it's not good to support an outsider like this. No matter what, you should at least place a few bets on yourself. Look, Nan Menxingye has already reached the 4th level, and he's at the 3rd level." Qianwudi replied indifferently, "I'll support Nan Menxingye in spirit. I also believe that he will win. But, I think you should bet on Li Yunxiao." Zhang Chong. With Qianwudi's bet, the people who bet on Nan Menxingye only had 2 bets until the end. One of them was from Zhang Chong, and the other was someone who was hoping to be an upset. A bunch of ignorant juniors. I'm waiting to see you cry from the compensation. Su Donha's mocking voice rang out with a disdainful look on her face. Her hatred for Yunxiao had reached the point where she wanted to kill him. "Why don't you bet on Tong Xiu, Granny?" Tang Jie sneered. Could it be that they are waiting for the last second to place their bets, in case someone follows suit? Su Donha hated it the most when people ridiculed her for being old. Her face turned green with anger and she snorted, "Uneducated brat." Tong Xiu was very confident that he would win the first place. If it weren't for the interference of the Cui family's boy, who was sneak attacked by Yunxiao and is now injured, I would be at ease even if I bet all his assets on him. The disdainful snorts from all around rang out. Tong Xiu became the 2nd unlucky person after Nan Menxingye, and he didn't even make a bet, not even a single gambler. The old hag is so jealous of everyone's confidence in young Master Yun that she's getting older by a few hundred years. I bet 150 on young Master Yun. Young Emperor Haolian laughed. This grand move made everyone suck in a breath of cold air and look at each other in horror. 150 wagers of chips were a total of 150 billion medial-grade primordial stones. It was definitely not a probing bet, but a gamble with all his might. If he didn't have full confidence, he wouldn't be so bold. This amount of money was most of the primordial stones that Tianyuan Trading Company could afford at the moment, so it was just enough to round it up. Cui Bo was also stunned for a moment. He smiled bitterly and said, 150 billion yuan. Miss Ling is really a hero among women. She didn't even blink her eyes when she spent such a large amount of money. Of course. Ding Ling smiled and said, "Why wouldn't I do something that will make me a fortune? It's an unchangeable fact that young Master Yun won first place. It's 100% certain." She said it with certainty, her face brimming with a confident smile and a happy gaze. All the men felt a burst of sourness in their hearts. To have such a close female friend in this life, they could die without regrets. Shui Luoyan looked over with a cold look in her eyes. There was also a trace of anger. She realized that the happier Ding Ling was, the more uncomfortable she felt. "I bet 20 on Xiao Jingming." Although her words had also attracted everyone's attention, most of them were still shocked by the 150 notes. Ding Ling glanced at her, and a faint smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. Then, she no longer looked at her. An inexplicable anger suddenly rose in Shui Luoyan's heart, as if she had been provoked. Moreover, her 20 chips seemed so pathetic in front of the other party's 150 chips. Even so, it was all the money she could use. She was screaming crazily in her heart, "Ding Ling, just you wait. When I become the young madam of the Blade Sect, I'll definitely teach you a lesson."